Matthew chapter 5. Let me give you an overview of where we're headed. Next week, Christmas Eve. The following week, New Year's Eve. Christmas Eve will be a time, I'm going to be in both places, just to remind you, because the schedule's changed. They changed my schedule a little bit on this too, and they just said, is it okay? And I said, sure, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you tell me to do. So I'm going back and forth on Christmas Eve. So we'll be going at 8, 9:30, and 11, both here and in the conference center, and music will be live, and the message will be live in both places. On New Year's Eve, I'm going to do something. I'm going to take the annual review, preview, combine them into one. That's what we did last year, but I'm going to do it on New Year's Eve this year, because I want to get back to this study, God's plan for growing in grace, and that's what we'll do when we pick up back in whatever it is, January 8th, or whatever that is. So when we come back on that, January 8th, we'll be talking where we leave off today here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. We'll do that for a few weeks. When we're done with however long that is, we're going back to do the study in the life of Christ. But here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take John and begin in John chapter 14, which is where we left off in the study of life of Christ. Really study John verse by verse, and then take excursions into these other gospels to supplement that. So we'll still harmonize it, but we'll be looking at the life of Christ, and we'll be looking at John chapter 14 through the rest of that gospel. But today we continue in the series, God's Plan for Growing in Grace. We said that we're saved by God, from God, for God. And that being saved for God is really the emphasis of this series, that I'm saved by God, from God, and there's a purpose to that. And that's for me to serve Him. We used Isaiah as a model for this. Isaiah sees God who He is, sees His glory, His majesty, His power, His might. When he does, he immediately sees himself for who he is, immediately understands who he is. He said, woe to me, for I'm undone. Woe to me, for I am ruined, or I am lost. So you have people all around you who are trying to figure out who they really are, understand who they really are, and the easiest way to do that is and by the way, cheapest way to do that is not to take an excursion to Maui. Don't need to go to Maui to find yourself. You don't need to go to the Amazon or to New Zealand. You can find yourself by understanding who God is. When I understand who God is, I begin to understand who I really am. I was watching Oprah this week, and why do I watch Oprah? Say it nice and loud. Exactly. Why do I do everything? Exactly. You're pretty safe with that answer to just about any question. So I'm watching Oprah for you, and Will Smith is on, and Will is talking about his new movie, and he said something. And I was at the wrong TV, so I couldn't replay it. So I had to stay up and watch it again that night, because it's right at the beginning. It's in the first 7 or 8 minutes. I kind of wanted to make sure I got it right. But Will Smith was talking to Oprah about meeting Nelson Mandela, which would be a significant moment, and it was for Oprah too. And Will Smith said, when you meet Nelson Mandela, there's this overwhelming sense that floods over you. And he said, here's what it is, of how small you are and how big you can be. Now, here's what I think he was saying. There was no explanation. There wasn't a follow-up. Oprah just got it, okay? So because I wish I could have gone, I want to make sure I got what you're saying. I think what he was saying is, here's this iconic figure, certainly to the African-American community for sure, but certainly, to many anyway, certainly to Will Smith. And he's saying, when you're in his presence, you see how small you are, because you compare yourself to him. You see what he's done. So if Mandela is a problem for you in getting this, let's say it's Reagan, or let's say it's Bono. I don't know why we'd say it's Bono, but let's say it's Bono, or let's say it's Tom Brady, or let's say it's some figure, Bill Gates, me, whoever it is that you put in that process. I don't know, whoever that person. I would tell you, if you want to feel small, get the last Chuck Swindoll book. I don't even know what it is. Go to the front and just look how many books and pamphlets he's written, and you just look at it and you go, I'm a moron. I'm an idiot, okay? But I think that's what he's saying. When you look at those type of people, you go, it's incredible. I mean, they're bigger than life. I'm so small. And how big I can be, meaning they inspire me to do things that would maybe make my life significant. I think that's what he was saying. And that has some truth to it, I guess. But look at this. I'm comparing myself here not to any of those guys that I mentioned, or not to each other, but to God, as I really see him, to his glory and his majesty and his power. And now I get the right comparison. Woe to me, for I'm undone. And then God moves and saves him, forgives him of his sin. Verse 8, you heard the voice of the Lord. Who shall I send? Who will go for us? Here I am, send me. And all of a sudden, we have this idea of being big or being significant or doing something, and then we're getting the understanding that God saved us for a reason or a purpose. What do you think of when you hear that? That God saved you for a purpose, or God has works for you to do? I immediately think of specifics. What should I do? Where should I do it? How should I do it? When should I do it? Will I do this alone? Will I be part of a group? God saved me for a purpose. Well, what is it? What's it mean? What's it look like? What's it mean for me? It's different for me than for you, and you than the person next to you. What's that mean, he saved me for a purpose? I want to begin to get behind that and to understand what that is. I start to think of specifics, and when I think of specifics, I think of these then huge things that I need to be doing. Right? Does that translate to you at all? Because that's how I think. I don't know if that translates to you. And that's exactly where we're going in a week or so, or 2 or 3. But I want to stay big in scope here. I want to stay in this idea of us glorifying God, but even more than that, to begin with, of just God's glory. I want to think big here. Psalm 19, verse 1, the psalmist writes this: "The heavens declare the glory of God." Keep that place in Matthew marked and turn to the right to the book of Romans. It's an idea that's familiar to you if you understand and know the book of Romans, because Paul makes the same point about the heavens declare the glory of God, the existence of God, the necessity of a creator. Romans chapter 1, verse 18, "The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in righteousness." The idea of suppress the truth there is to literally resist it. I've used the illustration that I think of always when I think of holding it down is when Sarah was a little girl, she had a jack-in-the-box. It went the thing would explode, and it would take her a half a day to get the thing back in there. It was the perfect toy. Well, one day she was leaning on it, and she but she's got her hand on the lid so it doesn't explode. So now she's just going all day long. That's what I told her. She woke up the next morning, and where's my jack-in-the-box? I said, a guy broke in last night. Took your jack-in-the-box. Left the TV, money on the counter, credit cards. A jack-in-the-box thief. That's what you're going. That's the picture. That's what that word suppress means. They're holding it down. They're suppressing the truth. How do we know that? Well, verse 19, because that which is known of God is evident within them and really evident outside them. It's within them. They know that. There's a conscience. They sense there's something bigger than them. Verse 20, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they didn't honor him as God. They didn't give thanks to him. They became futile in their speculation. Their foolish hearts are darkened. Professing to be wise, they become fools. And then this exchange takes place in verse 23. They exchange the glory of the incorruptible God for the image of the form of the corruptible man. They trade the creator for the creation. Just hang, just soak with this idea for a while, the glory of God. I hope you maybe think this through. Let me read to you from the pen of Charles Spurgeon as he reflects on Psalm 119, the heavens declare the glory of God. People walking erect are evidently made to scan the skies, and those who begin to read creation by studying the stars start the book at the right place. At every moment, God's existence, power, wisdom, and goodness are being sounded by the heavenly heralds that shine on us. It is not merely glory that the heavens declare, but they declare the glory of God. They deliver such unanswerable arguments for a conscious, intelligent, planning, controlling, and presiding creator that no unbiased person can remain unconvinced. The testimony given by the heavens are no mere hint. It is a plain, unmistakable declaration of the most constant and abiding kind. Yet for all this, to what avail is the loudest declaration to the deaf or the clearest showing to the spiritually blind? God's Holy Spirit must illuminate us, or all the suns in the Milky Way never will. The heavens declare the glory of God. We look at them. They are big. They scream of a creator. Very important, not a manufacturer. You got kind of words going on now. Somebody will be saying, well, I want to buy something made in America. And a guy will say, well, I'll sell you something right here. It says right here, assembled in America. And there's a little subtlety that's going on. One is saying, well, the parts are coming from all over the world, but we put them together here. And the other is say we manufacture it here. And the point is, God did not assemble and God did not manufacture. There was nothing, and he said, go, be light, be something. He created. All we can ever do is manufacture. All man can ever do is assemble. But God created, and they become evidence of his eternal power, his divine nature. And if I begin to turn away from that, I'm missing, not, and I love Spurgeon's words, not just a hint, but an unmistakable declaration of the most constant and abiding kind. The Greek thinker Aristotle wrote this: should a man live underground and converse with works of art and mechanics, and afterwards he be brought into the open day to see the several glories of the heavens and the earth, he would immediately pronounce them the work of such a being as we define God to be. In other words, Aristotle's saying what Paul said, and that is, you got the creation all over, it screams of a creator. Spurgeon is saying, listen, this is constant. This never ends. Isaiah wrote in Isaiah 40, verse 26, lift up your eyes on high and see who created these stars. He who brings out their host by number, calling them by name, by the greatness of his might, because he's strong in power. No one is missing. No star is missing. I just came across the article this week. It's Dateline, Sydney, Australia. Ever want to wish upon a star? Well, you have 70,000 million to choose from. That's the total number of stars known in the universe, according to a study by Australian astronomers. That is about 10 times as many stars as grains of sand on all the world's beaches and deserts. The figure, 70 followed by 22 zeros, or more accurately, 70 sextillion, was created by a team of stargazers based at the Australian National University. Speaking to the General Assembly of the International Astronomers Union meeting in Sydney, Dr. Simon Driver said that the number was drawn based on a survey of one strip of the sky rather than trying to count every individual star. I laughed when I read that. I thought, what about, you're a graduate assistant? Here's your job. Go count the stars. 1, 2, 69,000 million, and 1. So, I mean, that's a long haul. So what they did is they took the two most powerful telescopes in the world and they did a survey. They cut a strip of the sky, and they found in that sky there were 10,000 galaxies. And they determined those by the brightness they had taken, how many stars they each contained. Then they took that number and multiplied it by the number of strips that they needed to cover the entire sky, and then multiplied that again out to the edge of the visible universe. Back to the article. He said that there were likely many million more stars in the universe, but that 70 sextillion figure was the number of visible within the range of modern telescopes. The actual number of stars could be infinite, he said. The universe is so big, light from other sides of the universe hasn't even reached us yet. Asked if he believed the huge scale of the universe meant that there was intelligent life out there somewhere, he told the paper, 70,000 million is a big number. It's inevitable. I don't know that, by the way. I don't have a view on that. The minute you say there isn't life out there, meaning I don't even know what that means, because they're going to find water somewhere, and does that mean life and all that? My sense is there isn't. Which really is incredible, because then you're saying God created all of that for this, for us? Yeah. Oh, that's a waste. It's not a waste. It shows you how big he is. And the universe gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And as it gets bigger, our view of God gets bigger. The glory of God and who he is. I have some friends that have gone to Europe. And they'll come back and they all say the same thing. When you go in these cathedrals, they're so inefficient. They're massive. They're huge structures, but they only seat 500, 600 people, and most of them can't even see because of pillars. And I will say to them, do you know why they're built like that? And sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. And the answer is this. The whole architecture was designed so that when you walked into it, the architecture dwarfed you. And you got a sense of the majesty, the power, the size, the glory of God. You looked at it and you immediately felt insignificant. And all I'm saying is, however insignificant you feel there, when you step outside, you shrink even more. He's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the key to you getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Just as John the Baptist said, he must increase and you and I must decrease in our own mind. And I have discovered that thinking and rethinking and reading about this pushes my mind toward that. Paul said they knew all of this, but they exchanged this incorruptible for the corruptible. God gave them over to their own hearts, and then you see in the balance of chapter 1 kind of the decline of man. They just did whatever they wanted to do. Verse 32 said, although they know the ordinances of God, in other words, they're aware that there's this conscience in them, they're in absolute rebellion. They give hearty approval to those who practice them. They cheer others to join them. Writing about this thought, John Piper writes this. This is the point. We were made to know and treasure the glory of God above all things. And when we trade that treasure for images, everything is disordered. You have to listen closely here. The sun, S-U-N, the Son of God's glory the Son of God's glory was made to shine at the center of the solar system of our soul. When it does, all the planets of our life are held in proper orbit. When the sun is displaced, everything flies apart. The healing of the soul begins by restoring the glory of God to its flaming, all-attracting place at the center. We are all starved for the glory of God, not the glory of self. Then he has this is a great sentence. No one goes to the Grand Canyon to increase self-esteem. In other words, I don't go to the Grand Canyon and say, oh, I feel good about myself. I look at this. I went to the Grand Canyon. I've been there one time. I've been here since, well, it hasn't been that long, so you got it. I've been here since 75. Okay, so I've had 31 years. We went up there once. They complained the whole way up. It was my family. They complained the whole way up. We stopped at one point, and Haley said, look around. There's not one place. We'd made the turn to go in. You can't see a store. You can't see anything. We're in the middle of nowhere. We went in, literally. We pulled, you know where the gift shop is? Some of you have been there. We went out. We stood there. We said, my golly, what a gully. We turned around, went back in to the gift store, and we were not at the Grand Canyon 5 minutes. We're pulling out, and we stop at the IMAX on the way out. They said, hey, let's go see this. And they were in awe of the movie. Now, there's something missing in that whole equation. I don't know what it is. But when you did look at it, I kept saying, this sounds so stupid. Maybe you said this when you were there. I said the same thing. It looks, what'd you say? Anybody? Just like the pictures. It does. It looks just like the pictures. It's incredible. It looks just like the pictures. But I do have to admit, I did not necessarily feel better about myself, but I felt more insignificant in that. The glory of God. He's the creator, we're the creature. And the reason that we're here on this earth, those of us who are followers of His, to glorify Him and enjoy Him forever. Well, turn to Matthew chapter 5. That's what we're looking at. And we're really, the whole kind of anchor for this series is Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let's make sure we get the context here. Chapter 5, verse 1, Jesus saw the crowds, went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, he didn't sit down because he's pooped, he sat down because that's the position there of teaching. He sat down, his disciples came to him, he opened his mouth, and he began to teach. And we're going to look at a part of what he said, but I want you to look at the reaction. Go to the very end of the book. Very end of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 7, verse 28. When Jesus had finished these words, Matthew 5, 6, 7, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one having authority, not as their scribe. He wasn't one of their scribes. He's not quoting those who would quote others. He was speaking with authority. When we look at the Sermon on the Mount, their mouths drop open. They hear this teaching because as Jesus is delivering to them an entirely new approach to living. Again, just again, by way of context, give me one more second. Look at chapter 5 there. Look at verse 22. It's in the context, Jesus said, I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets. I didn't come to abolish, but I came to fulfill. And then he's teaching. Now, look at verse 22, 28, 32, 34, 39, 44. They all have the same idea. Jesus lays down a premise. For example, verse 21, you have heard the ancients were told. Verse 22, but I say to you. Verse 27, you have heard it was said. Verse 28, but I say to you. Verse 31, it was said. Verse 32, but I say to you. Verse 33, you have heard the ancients were told, but, verse 34, I say to you. Verse 38, you have heard it was said. Verse 39, but I say to you. Verse 43, you have heard it was said. Verse 44, but I say to you. It's a whole new way of thinking. Jesus is taking this law and taking it, if you will, even deeper. He's saying it's not just compliance externally, it's a whole new way of thinking. It's a whole new heart. So when John MacArthur is talking about the Sermon on the Mount, he's talking about some important things that we learn. One of them is just that, the necessity of a new birth. That God's calling us to a standard that's too high beyond any human power. We need to be born again. We need a creator. We need Jesus as our only hope to meet God's standard. Man cannot do that. He fulfilled that law, died on the cross. We believe in him. We accept him as Lord and Savior. We repent, and at that moment, our law is fulfilled, but it's fulfilled in him for us. It gives us, again, MacArthur, God's pattern for happiness and true success. Standards for living, goals, motivations for living. How do I find success? How do I find happiness in this world? Meaning. It shows us that the obedient life of this proclamation is the only life that's pleasing to God. But MacArthur adds this. The sermon is perhaps the greatest scriptural resource for witnessing and for reaching others for Christ. That's what got me in the discussion we're in. So let's read these verses and try to pull this together. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You're the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. And then verse 16, let your light shine before men in such a way that they see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. What Jesus is talking about in this section, these 4 verses, really all through the Sermon on the Mount, but really here, is you and I as a citizen of the kingdom or a kingdom citizen. What does it look like for us to be Christians in this world? One author writes this, in these 4 verses, the Lord summarizes the function of believers in the world. Reduced to one word, the function is influence. Whoever lives according to the Beatitudes is going to function in the world as salt and light. Christian character, consciously or unconsciously, affects other people for better or for worse. John chapter 17, when we get there in our study months from now, Jesus prays this to the Father. I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. As you sent me into the world, I also send them into the world. The mandate for you and me is to be in the world, to not live in isolation, to not create some sort of a Christian cocoon where I hang only with other believers. Do we need one another? Absolutely. That's why this corporate gathering is important. That's why the things that we encourage you to be about, equipping and encouraging one another, comforting one another, all those things, those are really important to us. But we're also to be salt and light in the midst of a dead, dark world. To influence, to exert that influence on the world around us. It's impossible for salt and light to affect unless there's contact. John writes in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15, do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in them. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. The world is passing away, and also its lust, but the one who does the will of God lives forever. We are to be in this world. Have you heard that before? But not of this world. Looking at this section of Scripture, G. Campbell Morgan writes this, the world needs salt because it's corrupt and light because it's dark. Jesus, looking over the multitudes of his day, saw the corruption, the disintegration of life at every point, its breakup, and because of his love for the multitudes, he knew the thing that they needed most was salt in order that the corruption should be arrested. He saw them also wrapped in gloom, sitting in darkness, groping amid mists and fog. He knew they needed, above everything else, light. So, Jesus says, you're salt and you're light. Look at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. Both those verses begin with the same first 2 words, you are. Let me give you 3 observations about those 2 words. Number 1, the way it reads, the emphasis in the structure is on you. So it should read this way, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. Here's the second thing. The you is plural. He's speaking of the body of Christ, of the church. That changes that just a little bit, doesn't it? And typically what's true, and we say this almost always, what's true for us individually is typically true for us corporately. But that really changes some of the application points here. I think it helps us to understand, in other words, there's things we're about doing collectively, and even as we do them individually, it's still part of the whole. But it could really read this way. East Valley Bible Church are the light of the world, are the salt of the earth. That we're here for a purpose. Burden is too strong a word, but I spend hours every week thinking about this, which maybe means I'm not very efficient or effective if I have to keep thinking about it. But what's unique about East Valley Bible Church? There has to be some reason that we're here other than to just keep doing what we're doing. Here's the third thing about these two words. The word are is not a command. You're not asking to do something. He's simply saying, this is what you are. You're being. This is what you're being. You may be lousy salt and a crummy light, but you are a salt and you are a light. It's not a question of whether you're going to be. You are that. Let me give you one more thing that strikes me as unusual. Verse 13, you're the salt of the earth. Verse 14, you're the light of the world. Why did he use earth in verse 13 and world in verse 14? I don't know. And the more I've studied, it's been interesting. I haven't found anybody who's gotten too concerned about it. It seems to me the word that's translated earth speaks of people or individuals. The word that's translated world speaks more of world system or beliefs or behavior or thought process. So maybe it's all encompassing in both thoughts. You're the salt and you're the light to the not the globe, but to the world thought process, to the world view, to the behavior, to the beliefs of all the people that are in that world. No. Certainly fits. Salt. You are salt. You are the salt of the earth. When William Barclay's writing about salt, he writes this: salt has always been valuable in human society, often much more than it is today. During a period of ancient Greek history, it was called theon, which means divine. The Romans held that except for the sun, S-U-N, nothing was more valuable than salt. Often, Roman soldiers were paid in salt. And from that came the expression, not worth his salt. Salt, very valuable. We don't, again, not as we see it, very valuable in that economy. Still valuable to us, still commodities we would know. Characteristics of salt, there are many. All of these kind of have viable applications to this. We're just trying to get a sense of what he means. Okay? One of the things that salt does is it creates thirst. When we were kids, we took salt tablets. It seems stupid to me now. But what they did was they made you thirsty, and I guess sometimes we would get so busy playing that we would forget to hydrate ourselves. We become dehydrated. And these tablets created a thirst, and it kept us hydrated. So there's that sense in which he's saying, listen, you're the salt of the earth. You create a thirst. The people around you see that. They see that they're spiritually needy, dehydrated. You go and you create that. Salt also provides flavor, zest. Susan made, I've got certain things. I'm not a fancy eater. I'm not into certain, my birthday every year, they make meatloaf and scalloped potatoes for me. That's my favorite. Okay? I'm easy to cook for. Susan made navy bean soup the other day. I love navy bean soup. And she let those beans just soak, and they were just exploding, and then put a little ham in them. And then we have cornbread with syrup on it. Okay? But the soup just didn't have much zing to it. Okay? It needed a flavor. It needed a salt or a pepper or something. On the second Friday of December every year at 1:15, I meet the same guy at Durant's for lunch. This year was our 26th year. Okay? 1:50. We hardly talk. We don't talk to each other through the year. It's the only time we talk. And he's the guy who hired me in 1980, and we've been doing it the second Friday of December at Durant's for 26 years. We have a ritual. We always talk about the same things. We bet on every bowl game. Okay, we do all 32 bowl games. One guy picks a line, the other guy picks a team. We bet $2 a game. No one's ever paid. Okay, so if you're concerned that I'm a gambling freak, you can be that. Every year, we order the same thing. Every year, the server will come and say, what would you like? And essentially in unison, we will say, the fat man won. Every time I say the fat man won, the phrase, you are what you eat, screams through my mind. Okay? The fat man won. How would you like it? Medium well. Would you like the potatoes? And you don't even need to go to the or. Yes. You want a salad? Half and half dressing. When she brings it every year, she says the same thing. I've added atomic horseradish. Now, when you hear horseradish, you just think horseradish, flavor, zest. When you hear atomic, that should catch your mind. Every year, we evidently are very slow learners. This year, she brought it. I said, now remember, that's spicy. And he took it, and I saw him dip it in there, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to enjoy it. I got to watch this moment. He shoved that in there, and instantaneously, his head began to perspire. You know? And I thought, you're the salt of the earth, you create flavor. Someone has written this, we Christians have no business being boring. Our function is to add flavor and excitement to the world. We're alive. We know the creator of the universe. There should be a zest about us. I don't know how many years ago now, I was at another church teaching on a Sunday morning. And every church, I found it first hour because I knew it'd be up here. Oh, there's one over there too. This is the sheet. So every week we create a sheet. And this will tell you, here's an opening CD, here's the first song, here's the welcome, who's doing what, the arrangements, that kind of thing. Well, I get to this place, and I go up, I put my Bible down in the front row, right where they're sitting. I go and do my thing. They give me the sheet. I come back, my Bible's gone. It's in the second pew. People sitting in the first pew, and I said, oh, I was there. And they said, well, these are our seats. This is where we sit. Which saved the pastor $10,000 on a study to understand why his church isn't growing. Okay? So I'm there. I am saying these are sad people. And I've got the sheet, and they're singing, and it is bad. It is whatever. Get the worst church service you've ever been in your mind. Get that in your picture, and then just put a little steroids in that, and that's what it is. I'm sitting right there. I got the sheet. I'm thinking, how long can this go on? I look down, and the third song is Joy, 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 Joy Down in My Heart. And I thought, well, this will be interesting. And this is exactly what happened. I said, all right, turn to number 117. All right. We have joy, 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 joy down in our heart. Where? Down in our heart. Where? Down in our heart. And I'm not making up a word of this. And I'm thinking, I wonder how far down I'd have to go to find the joy. I said to the staff the other day, and I it was something I was thinking, so it might be stupid. I hadn't really thought it through, but I said basically, because you get all these why are we here, equip, encourage, and all. Basically, here's why we're here. At least I think as a staff, to help people get ready to live and die. Basically, to help you live and die. So even in our dying, we're influencing or flavoring the world. Paul's writing to this church at Thessalonica that's confused about the resurrection, and he said this, we don't want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve as do those who have no hope. We bring flavor to the world. Salt is also an irritant. So that phrase that you hear all the time, we're here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted, that's some of what goes on. So when you're talking to somebody and they're saying, I don't want to hear that. Well, I've always had a really difficult time with this. How do you love the sinner and hate the sin? Because the sin's wrapped up in the sinner. And my experience is when you really talk about the sin, the sinner tends to take it personally. I had a guy I used to work with, and he said, Shrades, you're driving me nuts. You're like a, and he did this. You're like a chihuahua. Just always around me. Leave me alone. I said, hey, man, I didn't ask you. You asked me the question. If you're going to hell, that's your own business. I don't care about that. No, I'm teasing. But how do you talk about those things? And how do you talk about that life? And how do you deal with cultural issues? And I'll tell you what we see more and more in the church are men and women who are raised with essentially no background at all, who find themselves immersed in something they sense isn't right. And then we come along and say, okay, here's the truth. Here's the big thing probably. Salt is a preservative. That's probably the big thing. Slows down moral defilement. Martin Lloyd-Jones writes this: most competent historians are agreed in saying that what undoubtedly saved England from a revolution such that was experienced in France at the end of the 18th century was nothing but evangelical revival. This was not because anything was done directly, but because masses of individuals had become Christians and were living this better and had this better life and had this higher outlook. The whole political situation was affected, and great acts of parliament, which were passed in that century, were mostly due to the fact that there was a large number of individual Christians found in the land. This gets at, I'm going to spend just a second on it. I hear a lot of discussion about Christians don't belong in politics. And I want to be sensitive. I got that no bill or no act or no passage of legislation is going to save somebody's soul. But I do think that we certainly should be involved in public policy. I was listening to Wayne Grudem the other day, and he said one of the significant ways God restrains evil in the world is through government. I want to be very careful. I see moral majorities and religious right, and I hear all of those things, and some of these guys, I'm not a fan of theirs. But go back. Since 1973, 50 million babies have been killed. And it was a policy change, a court decision, but public policy certainly could address that. You go tell the 50 million babies that were killed that policy is not important. Or state by state that changes the whole view, the core fundamental view of what marriage is. And say, well, we're not going to get involved. We're above the fray. We don't fight with ballots and bullets, but prayers and Bibles. I got that. I think I have got a wonderful balanced perspective on this. But you belong affecting public policy, I think. Anyway. Salt of the earth. And then he says, look at this, back verse 13, we got, oh my golly, 8 minutes. You're the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? What's the answer to that? It can't be. It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. A lot of the salt that they got from the Dead Sea was contaminated with gypsum and other minerals. And when they'd get it home, they'd realize it wasn't any good, lost its saltiness. What they would do is throw it out. They were very careful to make sure they didn't throw it into flower beds or something, but they would throw it on paths. You know, we didn't have concrete there. They'd throw it on paths. They'd put it on there, be trampled underfoot. It would kill anything that was growing in there, and that's what he's saying. You're not salt that's good for that. At that point, you've lost it. Throw it away. You are the light of the world. A city sit on a hill can't be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. You're the light of the world. Now, in John chapter 8, Jesus said, 8:12, I'm the light of the world. Here he says, you're the light of the world. The connecting verse, John chapter 9, verse 5, says this, Jesus speaking, as long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. He's not in the world anymore. He's in the world now through you. God dwells you. God lives inside of you. You are God's light to this world. Light has probably more than this, but I've got 3 functions. Number 1, it reveals reality. When light comes into a room, it allows me to see things as they really are. Every person in here had the experience of laying in bed at night and you hear a noise, creak. Then you're not really sure. Then you kind of look over. You're certain there's somebody in the corner. You can see him. You can see the silhouette. You lay there and you debate, what are you going to do? You know, Susan, there's a guy in the corner. Go get him. Yeah. Figure out what you're going to do. But ultimately, you throw in the light, and there's your coat hanging over a chair. It allows me to see things as they really are. You're the light of the world. You bring reality to it. This world has a whole caricature of what they think life is all about, but you bring the truth. Light also is a measurement or a standard or a guide. We speak of light years or the speed of light. When the astronauts first went to the moon in 1969, they sat a little contraption on the moon, and they fired a beam from Earth, hit this, sent the signal back, and by timing it and the speed of light and the measurements, they could determine exactly the distance from the moon to the Earth at that point in time. You see guys out firing beams and measuring things. You're a measurement. You're a standard. God's word is a light or a lamp to our feet, and we become to the world a standard or a measurement. That's why it's so destructive when we don't measure up to that standard ourselves. Here's the third thing that light does. It gives life. All you have to do to see that is to turn the sun off for 3 or 4 days. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life, that you'd have it abundantly. The world has no idea of what life really is. Now, if we were to take these two things and put them together, Jesus is saying, you go into the world, you become my light, you reveal reality, you explain the standard, my standard, you set the measurement, you have the keys to life, it's a relationship with me. You're the salt. You create thirst. You add flavor. There is an irritant. You are a preserving agent in the midst of this. Speaking of this, and I don't know where I got this contrast, somebody's written this. Whereas salt is hidden, light is obvious. Where salt works secretly, while light works openly. Salt works from within, light from without. Salt is more the indirect influence of the gospel, where light is more its direct communication. Salt works primarily through our living, while light works primarily through what we teach and preach. Salt is largely negative. It can retard corruption, but it can't change corruption into incorruption. Light is more positive. It not only reveals what is wrong and false, but it helps produce what is righteous and true. Here's the point, and we'll connect it, we got to go, is that for salt or light to work, there has to be contact. For salt to work in any of these agents, it has to be a contact to preserve that meat. For light to work, it has to be in the midst of the darkness. God calls for his kingdom citizens to live in a life that's very much in contact with a lost and dying world. Here's a sentence somebody's written. There can be no such thing as secret discipleship. You know what's amazing is when somebody takes a sentence and then they just do a very simple exercise and you go, oh, wow, that's the next sentence. There can be no such thing as secret discipleship, for either the secrecy destroys the discipleship or the discipleship destroys the secrecy. There can't be any such thing as a secret disciple. Because if I'm secret, the discipleship never takes place. And if I'm discipling, it can't be in secret. It requires the presence of others. Our life, and I'm going to go back to that, we, plural, you, me, we, us. We're salt and light in this world. Clearly individually, but also collectively. Well, I'm going to confess something to you. I'm always leery of this because they tend to get shoved down your throat at some point in time, but so be it. I did a Christmas message, 8 years ago or something, that was along this line. I don't know why you people come on Christmas and Easter. Some were offended by it. Some found it encouraging because it created discussion. Every time that our calendar flips to Christmas or Easter, I think of that message. And I think it was wrong the way it was presented. I understand the idea, and I understand the intent, and I understand all the things. But I think it demonstrates really a crummy attitude. And if I have that attitude, you easily could. We start to see those days as days almost of competition, of days when we're saying, here's a bunch of people sitting in my seat. Here's a bunch of kids we don't normally see, and they're not used to childcare, so they're a little more problematic. Why should I move out of 9:30 service Christmas Eve? And it's not just Christmas Eve. The same principle is true Christmas Eve as is through the whole year. Every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday here. Why should you not come at 9:30 when it's convenient for you? Because God may bring somebody here who needs to be here next Sunday, who maybe God's even going to use that message to save, and they can't get in the door because you got your same seat that you've been in forever. And so when they come on campus, they need to see smiling faces like yours, mine, ours. And it's not just next Sunday, it's every Sunday. Do you see what I'm saying here? When I think salt of the earth, light of the world, I got to go. I got to go out. I got to figure it out. I got to penetrate my neighborhood. I got to figure out. All those things are true. But look at what he's going to do next week. He's going to bring them in here. You don't have to go anywhere. All you got to do is be salt and light right here at church. It can't, I wouldn't think, get any easier than that. All you got to do is put on a badge that says greeter and smile. And I don't mean fake it. I mean genuinely say, you know what? I'm glad you're here. And a Sunday like today, I go around and I don't know how many people I meet. I know that most of the time when I meet somebody, I say to them, I'm glad you're here. And they probably just heard me say that to the person before that and the person before them. And they're going, well, that's his little shtick. No. I'm really glad you're here. God's got us here for a reason and a purpose. For a reason and a purpose. It's to be salt and light. And it begins right here. This is a home game right here. We're wearing home jerseys right now. And now we go out into the world. But it's everything. This thought process, and the reason I'm spending the time on this is because this is really important for us. You see verse 16, and we'll stop. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they see your good works and glorify your fathers in heaven. That's what we're trying to get. Remember what I said? That's really the verse that launched it. That people ought to see your good works. Well, what are those good works? That's what we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks when we get together. And then that they glorify your fathers in heaven. How are they going to do that unless you tell them? This Christian life of yours is to be set on a pedestal, is what he's saying, like a light. You set it there before the whole world. I used to read when Paul would say that, follow me. I'm thinking, oh my golly, that's a big one. But that's what this says. We're supposed to say to the world, you follow us as we follow Christ. Your life is supposed to be distinctive and different. Every aspect of it. Work, home, school, play, family, salt and light. Let's pray. Father, thank you for saving us. And for saving us for a reason, for bringing us here for a purpose. I pray for next Sunday, Christmas Eve. I pray that you would bring many people who otherwise would never come to a place like East Valley Bible Church, or maybe have been here but not in a while. Many people who need to hear the gospel. And they need to see the gospel. They need to see kids who are cared for, people who are visiting who need help and instruction, who are guided. They need to hear a message of hope and love. They need to hear the good news. God, I pray that you would soften our hearts if necessary, that you would firm up our determination to be salt and light in this world. No secret disciples. If we're secret, there's no discipleship. If we're discipling, well, we can't do that in secret. God, we love you, and we worship you, and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a great week. We'll see you Christmas Eve.